Hey everybody, my name is Brendan Noble and I'm a fantasy author. Welcome back to my Slavic Saturday series where we talk about Slavic mythology and folklore related to my Slavic fantasy series, the Frostmarked Chronicles, and the first book in the series, A Dagger in the Winds. This week we're kind of going to switch it up a little bit because I've been asked about this topic so many times and I've decided that I finally need to address it. And that is the topic of Chernobog and Belobog, who are two gods who are very popular about Slavic mythology, but actually were never worshipped among the Slavic pagans. Before I dive too far into Černobog and Černobog, though, I just wanted to remind you that I'm still looking for advanced readers for the first book in my Slavic fantasy series, A Dagger in the Winds, which an advanced reader will receive a free copy of the book in exchange for a review either on Amazon or your favorite retailer. Go ahead and check out the links down in the comments below if you're interested in that. But now let's jump into these gods. Now I'm fully aware that some people are already going to be upset with me because I brought up Chernobog and claimed he's fake. Chernobog, especially out of this pair, is considered to be very popular. He appears especially in American Gods by Neil Gaiman, both the books and the TV show. He also appears in Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik, and he appears in even Marvel Comics and video games such as Smite, Kingdom Hearts, and Crusader Kings 2, which is a personal favorite of mine. And despite all of these appearances, I cannot criticize these people for including Chernobog and Belobog occasionally within these stories because he's become so well known. But because of this inclusion, there's become this thought that Chernobog is not only just a god in Slavic mythology, but one of the most significant gods, and I really need to address that. But let's take a step back for a second and discuss who Chernobog and Bjelobog were alleged to be. So, Chernobog is considered to be the black or dark and evil god, and while Bjelobog is thought to be the white or good god in this kind of duality that's set up between these two. They each ride a horse of their corresponding color. They fight each other often as Bjelobog tries to stop Chernobog from destroying the world. But besides that, there's really not much known about them. Neither really appears in Slavic folktales, and the only real early mention of him is by the German scholar Helmut in the 12th century Chronicles Slavorum. And again, this is over 200 years after the Slavic realms were starting to become Christianized. And there's this kind of perception, perhaps, that this was a Christian fabrication of these gods. Though it's kind of rare that we have any written evidence for a lot of the gods, the fact that this shows up, you would think would back up their existence. But the fact of just the context of the timing, and then the fact that both Chernobog and Belobog really don't align with a lot of things we are certain about in Slavic mythology, a lot goes up against them. Helmut himself refers to Chernobog as Diabol, which is a Slovak term for devil. And this kind of already gives a first hint into this duality that this Christianity has that doesn't really appear in Slavic mythology. I'm a Christian myself, but I can't deny the fact that Christians and a lot of leaders at the time were trying to quell and destroy Slavic paganism. And this was done through the destruction of idols and turning gods either into saints or demons, depending on the current thought. And this was meant to take it from this kind of gray sort of morality that is in Slavic paganism and turn it into the pure good or evil of Christianity. So Helmut and others claim that Chernobog and Belobog are these supreme deities that are pure good and evil clashing over in this cosmic fight really doesn't align with Slavic mythology. First of all, we know that often the supreme deity was thought to be Perun, who clashed with Veles, who another people thought was the supreme deity, but neither was good or evil. It was the higher god and lower god, and this fight was raging across Slavic mythology, and we are very certain about it because of so many stories about it. But both of these gods were highly worshipped. Veles was not the devil, and Perun was not the high god. there was worship of both of them in different ways, and in some places one was thought to be better than the other, and other places the other was thought to be higher. And so there was not consistency here about a pure good god and a pure evil devil. Even Marzana or Marana, the goddess of winter, death, and pestilence, was very thought negatively of, but even she was worshipped because it was understood that her role in the winter cycle and the cycle of the seasons was important. It really doesn't align with this idea of pure evil that comes through in Christianity. So what they did was potentially trying to place something else on top of it. So of all of these things, neither Chernobog nor Białobog very much fit into what we are certain about with Slavic mythology. From the creation stories with either Svarog, Rod, Perun, or the variety of them, none of them align with this, and neither does it align with each of the tribe having often different higher gods, many worshipping Perun, many worshipping Svarog, many worshipping Velas, or even worshipping local gods we may not know about today because of the regional small differences. But this idea that Chernobog and Belobog were the highest among them as pure good and evil just does not fit into the stories we're certain of. There's no folk tales about them, and the only mention is Helmut, which then led to more mentions later on that we really can't say are a basis when it's 700 years after the original end of Slavic paganism. So where does that lead us? I can't say that the inclusion of Chernobog and Belobog in stories or the thought of Slavic mythology is all that bad, though. And here's why. Slavic mythology is kind of passed down as a 1,000-year-long game of telephone. There was no real written language for the early Slavs before 950 AD, around the time in which they were Christianized. So what has been passed down was either written by Roman or Christian priests, or potentially written hundreds of years later as a collection of folk tales that were still told in communities. So we do know some things, but this telephone game has distorted some of history. But even that history we know conflicts with Chernobog and Belobog. But we might not know. Maybe some small tribes worshipped him, maybe some didn't. I am just happy the fact that Slavic mythology is being included so many places. I choose not to include them in my own stories, and I choose not to reference them really in the stories I talk about on this channel, but I really can't criticize it further than this historical context I'm trying to provide. Some people here have contradicted some things I try to say about some of the research I've found about Slavic mythology, and that's okay. I think in a lot of this, because there's so little evidence for a lot of it, what we're trying to do is collect and find as many of the stories as we can to get as close as possible to what people may have believed in Slavic mythology at the time. If we're not 100% right, that's okay. Part of it is the fun of it, and part of it is just trying to find where our cultural heritage comes from. And I think including Chernobog and Belobog in that through American gods or other stories, but they've brought attention to Slavic mythology at the very least, and so I can't place any blame on top of them for trying to at least bring some attention to a mythological study that has been really ignored compared to Greeks, Romans, and Norse. In the end, all we can do is really pick up these puzzle pieces and try to put together the puzzle in which Slavic mythology potentially can be. If we're close, I think that's a victory. So, sorry about this rant I kind of had this week. I've been asked about this so many times, I decided I needed to finally address it. I hope you guys enjoyed it still a little bit and learned a little bit about Slavic mythology, about what's real and what may not be real. And if you did enjoy this video, please remember to like and subscribe down below. I come out with these Slavic Saturday videos every Saturday. And until next week, I hope you guys all have a great weekend and a good rest of your week. See you guys later.